A boy selling lemonade saw a millionaire collapse in front of him. What he did in that moment saved much more than a life. Prepare your heart for this incredible story. Before we begin, leave a comment saying where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The scorching midday sun transformed São Paulo's streets into concrete furnaces, but Lucas Silva, 10 years old, remained there on the corner of Augusta Street with his small lemonade cart. His clothes were simple. His worn shoes let his toes peek through the holes, but his eyes shone with a determination that contrasted with the humility of his condition. "Cold lemonade, the best in the region," shouted Lucas, his young voice competing with the noise of heavy traffic. Beside him, a cardboard box held his most precious treasures: notebooks scribbled with drawings of impossible inventions and an old calculator he had found in the trash. Lucas wasn't just a boy selling lemonade. He was a dreamer. Every reel he managed to collect didn't just go to help his mother, Maria, pay the bills. A small part was always saved in a cookie tin hidden under his bed, destined for his big dream, one day having his own invention laboratory. "Mom always says that dreaming costs nothing," Lucas murmured to himself while mixing the juice with artisanal care. "But making dreams come true, that costs everything." Indeed, on the other side of the city, in a luxurious penthouse in the Jardins neighborhood, Robert Mitchell adjusted his Italian silk tie while observing São Paulo through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 52 years old, Mitchell had built a financial empire worth billions, but his personal life was an emotional desert that all the money in the world couldn't irrigate. The 500-square-meter apartment was a museum of loneliness disguised as success. Artworks that cost fortunes, decorated walls that never heard laughter, a dining table for 12 people that never received guests, empty rooms that echoed only with the sound of his hurried steps toward another meeting, another business deal, another day identical to the previous one. "Mr. Mitchell," said Margaret, his personal assistant, through the intercom, "the driver is waiting. Your meeting with the Japanese investors is at 2 o'clock. Robert picked up his genuine leather briefcase, checked his platinum Rolex, and walked toward the private elevator. Another day in the life of a man who had everything except what really mattered. Traffic was particularly terrible that Tuesday. Robert's Mercedes-Benz S-Class had been stopped in the same place for 15 minutes, and he felt the familiar tension rising up his neck. His hands trembled slightly as he checked emails on his phone, responding to messages about mergers and acquisitions that moved millions. "Sorry, Mr. Mitchell," said the driver. "It looks like it's going to take a bit longer." Robert looked out the tinted window and for the first time in years really observed the street. Street vendors, hurried people, children, and then his eyes fixed on a scene that for some reason made him stop typing. A small boy, maybe 10 years old, was behind a colorful lemonade cart. But that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the way the boy treated each customer as if they were the most important person in the world. He smiled, made jokes, asked about people's day. And when an elderly lady didn't have enough money, Robert saw the boy hand over a cup for free, saying something that made her smile. "Stop the car," Robert said suddenly. "Sir, stop the car. I'm going to walk from here." Robert got out of the vehicle with the intention of just stretching his legs, but something pulled him toward the lemonade cart. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was nostalgia for a time when he too had been young and full of dreams. Lucas was explaining to a customer how he made the lemonade when he noticed a man in an expensive suit approaching. The man seemed different from other customers, more tense, more hurried, with an expression that suggested smiling was something he had forgotten how to do. "Good afternoon, sir," Lucas said with his characteristic enthusiasm. "Want to try the best lemonade in the city? It's made with fresh lemons and lots of love." Robert stopped in front of the cart, studying the boy with curiosity. "How much does it cost?" "3 reals for a large cup, 2 for a small one. But for you, who seems to be having a difficult day, I'll make a special price, 1 smile." The answer caught Robert off guard. One smile. Yeah, Lucas laughed. My mom always says that smiles are free but worth more than money. You look like you need one. Robert felt something strange happening in his chest. It had been so long since someone had cared about his well-being that he had almost forgotten what that feeling was like. All right, he said, trying to sketch something that resembled a smile. Give me a large cup. While Lucas prepared the lemonade with meticulous care, he began to chat. Do you work around here? From the suit, you must be a lawyer or businessman, right? Businessman, Robert replied, watching the precision with which the boy measured each ingredient. That's cool. I want to be a businessman someday too, but not the kind that just makes money. I want to invent things that help people. Lucas handed over the cup, his eyes shining with excitement. I've already invented lots of things in my head. A water purifier that works with solar energy, a machine that turns trash into energy, even a robot that helps people with disabilities. Robert took a sip of the lemonade and was surprised by the quality. It was refreshing, balanced, better than many expensive drinks he had tried. These inventions, did you draw them? Of course! Lucas grabbed one of his notebooks from the cardboard box. Want to see? If you're enjoying this story, leave a like to motivate me to tell more stories like this. What Robert saw left him shocked. The drawings were incredibly detailed for a child. They weren't just childish scribbles, but complex projects with notes about functioning, necessary materials, and even basic cost calculations. Where did you learn this? Robert asked, genuinely impressed. At the school library. I get books about engineering and science, and there are some YouTube videos I watch when I can use the school computer. Lucas flipped through the pages with pride. This one here is my favorite. A machine that purifies water from polluted rivers using plants and solar energy. Imagine how many people could have clean water. Robert was so absorbed in the drawings that he almost didn't notice the first signs. A slight dizziness, his vision becoming blurred, a tightness in his chest that started subtle but was intensifying rapidly. Sir, are you okay? Lucas's voice seemed to come from very far away. Robert tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come out. The accumulated stress of years, sleepless nights, the constant pressure of business, everything converged in that moment. His legs gave way and he collapsed on the sidewalk in front of the lemonade cart. Help! Someone help me! Lucas shouted, but didn't wait for help. With a maturity that contrasted with his age, he ran to his cart, grabbed a bottle of water and a clean towel. Kneeling beside Robert, Lucas placed the wet towel on the man's forehead and began talking to him, even though he was unconscious. Calm down, sir. Everything's going to be okay. Breathe slowly. My mom always says that when we're very nervous, we have to breathe deeply and think about good things. A small crowd formed around them. Some people took photos with their phones. Others just watched, but Lucas remained focused on helping. He elevated Robert's legs slightly, remembering something he had read about first aid, and continued talking to him. You know what, sir? I bet you used to be like me, young, full of dreams, wanting to change the world. I bet you once wanted to invent something too. To everyone's surprise, Robert began to regain consciousness. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on the worried face of the boy leaning over him. What happened? Robert murmured, his voice weak. You fainted, Lucas explained, helping him sit up slowly. But everything's okay now. How do you feel? Robert looked around, realizing he was on the ground, surrounded by people, being cared for by a child he barely knew. The humiliation should have been crushing, but all he felt was a strange gratitude. Better, he said honestly. Thank you. Do you want me to call an ambulance, or can I call someone from your family? The question hit Robert like a punch. Family? Who would he call? Margaret, his assistant, his accountant? For the first time, Robert realized how alone he was in the world. No need, he said, trying to get up. Lucas helped him, surprisingly strong for his age. You saved my life. Oh, it wasn't a big deal, Lucas smiled. My mom always says we have to take care of each other. That's how the world works better. Robert looked at the boy, really saw him for the first time. He noticed the worn shoes, the patched clothes, but also saw the genuine kindness in Lucas's eyes, the maturity in his actions, the wisdom in his words. "What's your name?" Robert asked. "Lucas Silver. And you, sir?" "Robert Mitchell." Lucas nodded as if the name meant nothing to him, which was refreshing for Robert, accustomed to people who changed their behavior when they knew who he was. "Mr. Mitchell, can I give you some advice?" Lucas asked while helping Robert stabilize completely. "Sure. You need to slow down a bit. I know you must have many responsibilities, but what's the point of being successful if we don't have health to enjoy it?" And Lucas hesitated, as if deciding whether he should continue. "You seem very lonely. Everyone needs friends." Lucas's words echoed in Robert's mind throughout the entire trip home. Instead of going to the meeting with the Japanese investors, for the first time in decades, canceling an important appointment, he asked the driver to take him directly home. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the lemonade boy, his impossible dreams, his natural kindness, how he had cared about a stranger. When he finally fell asleep, he dreamed of solar-powered water purifiers and children smiling as they had access to clean water for the first time. The next morning, against all advice from Margaret and his security team, Robert returned to the corner where Lucas sold lemonade. The boy was there, as always, smiling at customers and treating each person with genuine care. "Mr. Mitchell!" Lucas waved when he saw him approaching. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better, thanks to you." Robert stopped in front of the cart, noticing details he had missed the day before. The impeccable cleanliness of the equipment, the careful organization of ingredients, the small handmade sign that said, "Made with love and care." "I'm glad. Want another lemonade?" "Actually," Robert said, feeling strangely nervous, "I wanted to make you a proposal." Lucas tilted his head, curious. "Yesterday you showed me your drawings, your inventions. They are impressive, very impressive." Robert took a deep breath. "But what if I told you I could help you turn them into reality?" Lucas's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I have resources, contacts, laboratories. I can give you everything you need to develop your ideas, but—" Robert paused. "There would be one condition." Lucas's face closed slightly, life experience already teaching him that overly generous proposals usually came with traps. "What condition?" "That you teach me what it's like to have dreams again." The answer caught Lucas completely off guard. He studied Robert's face, looking for signs that this was some kind of prank or cruel joke, but all he saw was sincerity and a deep sadness in the older man's eyes. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious in my life." Lucas looked at his lemonade cart, at his drawing notebooks, at the simple but hopeful life he had built. Then he looked again at Robert and saw something he recognized: loneliness. The same feeling he sometimes felt when he came home and saw his mother working late, too tired to talk about his dreams. "Okay," Lucas said finally, "but I also have conditions." Robert smiled, a genuine smile for the first time in years. "What are they?" "First, my mom has to agree. Second, I continue selling lemonade, at least for now. It's important that I don't forget where I came from. And third," Lucas smiled mischievously, "you have to learn to make lemonade, for real. You can't invent good things if you don't know how to make at least one simple thing with your own hands." Robert laughed, really laughed, a belly laugh that came from some deep place in his soul that he thought was dead. "I accept all the conditions." And so began the most unlikely of partnerships. 3 days later, Robert found himself doing something he never imagined. He was in his luxury penthouse, but not in a business meeting. Instead, he and Lucas were on the terrace, where they had set up a small, improvised laboratory. The dining table that never received guests was now covered with construction materials, tools, computers, and a lemonade cart. "The first invention lesson," Lucas explained while teaching Robert to prepare the perfect lemonade, "is understanding that everything works better when you put love into what you do. It's not just mixing ingredients. It's thinking about who's going to drink it, about how you can make that person's day a little better." Robert, accustomed to closing million-dollar deals in minutes, discovered that making simple lemonade was surprisingly difficult. His first attempts were disastrous. Too sour, too sweet, no balance. "Easy, Mr. Mitchell." Lucas laughed, seeing the frustration on the man's face. Rome wasn't built in a day, and perfect lemonade wasn't either. "But how did you learn so quickly?" Robert asked, genuinely curious. "Watching my mum. She makes the best lemonade in the world, but not because she follows a recipe. It's because she pays attention to the weather, to people's moods, to what they need that day. Sometimes on a very hot afternoon, you put a little more ice. On a sad morning, a little more sugar. It's about connecting with people." The lesson went far beyond lemonade, and Robert knew it. It was about empathy, about human connection, about genuinely caring about others' well-being. Concepts he had lost somewhere on the journey to financial success. Meanwhile, in the improvised laboratory they had set up, Lucas was showing Robert his most ambitious project, the solar-powered water purifier. "The idea came because I noticed that many people in my neighborhood don't have access to clean water," Lucas explained, pointing to his detailed drawings. "I thought, what if we could use the sun, which is free and always there, to clean water?" Robert, who had financed dozens of technological projects over the years, was impressed by the sophistication of the concept. "Lucas, this here is revolutionary. Do you have any idea how many people this could help?" "That's why I want to do it," Lucas responded, his eyes shining. "Imagine, Mr. Mitchell, if every community could have clean water without depending on big companies or the government, if it was something they could build and maintain themselves." Robert felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, pure excitement about a project, not from the prospect of profit, but from the potential for positive impact. "Let's build a prototype," he said impulsively. Really? I have contacts at the best engineering laboratories in the country. We can have a working prototype in 2 weeks." Lucas jumped with joy, hugging Robert in a spontaneous display of affection that caught him off guard. It had been so long since someone had hugged him with genuine care that Robert was moved. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for reminding me why it's worth dreaming," Robert replied, his voice slightly choked. Lucas's mother, Maria Silva, worked as a cleaner in 3 different buildings to support the family. When Robert appeared at her simple but impeccably clean house to explain his proposal, she received him with the natural courtesy of someone raised to respect others, but also with the natural distrust of someone who learned that overly generous proposals usually hide traps. "Mr. Mitchell," Maria said, serving coffee in a simple cup, but offered with care, "I understand that you want to help my son, and I'm grateful for that, but I need to understand why." Robert looked around the small house. He noticed the books carefully organized on a makeshift shelf with bricks and boards, the well-tended plants in the windows, Lucas's drawings stuck on the refrigerator, the family photo smiling in a simple frame. It was a real home, something his luxury penthouse had never been. "Because your son saved my life," Robert said honestly. "And I'm not just talking about the day I fainted. I'm talking about something deeper. I had forgotten what it was like to have purpose, what it was like to care about something bigger than money. Lucas reminded me of that." Maria studied Robert's face, using a mother's sharpened intuition to assess his intentions. "And what do you gain from this? A second chance to do something that really matters." The conversation lasted 2 hours. Maria asked intelligent questions about Lucas's safety, about how this would affect his education, about guarantees that her family wouldn't be harmed if things didn't work out. Robert answered all of them with patience and honesty, recognizing that Maria had every right to be cautious. In the end, it was Lucas who sealed the deal. "Mom," he said, holding her hand, "Mr. Mitchell isn't trying to buy me or use me. He's lonely, like I feel sometimes when you're working and I'm at home studying. We can help each other. I can realize my dreams and help him remember his dreams." Maria looked at her son, maturity beyond his age shining in his eyes, and then at Robert, seeing the vulnerability and sincerity in his expression. "All right," she said finally, "but with clear rules. Lucas continues studying at regular school, continues living here, continues being a child when he's not inventing, and any sign that this is harming him, it all ends." "I completely agree," Robert said, extending his hand. "Thank you for trusting me." The following 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Robert used his contacts to assemble a team of the country's best environmental engineers, but made it clear that Lucas was the project leader. Initially, the professionals were skeptical about working under the guidance of a 10-year-old child, but this attitude changed quickly when they saw the sophistication of his ideas. "Dr. Santos," Lucas said to the chief engineer during the first meeting, "here in your project you're using activated carbon filters, which are efficient but expensive and need to be changed regularly. What if we use specific plants that naturally purify water? It would be more sustainable and cheap." Dr. Santos, a 50-year-old man with 3 doctorates, was impressed. "You're referring to bioremediation. It's a valid approach but complex." "Complex, but not impossible," Lucas replied, showing his notes. "I researched plants like water hyacinth and cattail that absorb heavy metals from water. If we combine this with solar distillation and simple filtration, we get a system that any community can operate." The conversation continued for hours, with Lucas demonstrating knowledge that impressed even the most experienced specialists. Robert watched everything with a mixture of pride and admiration, realizing he had drastically underestimated the boy's potential. At the end of 2 weeks, they had a working prototype. It wasn't just functional. It was elegant, efficient, and surprisingly economical. The system could purify 100 liters of water per day using only solar energy and materials that cost less than 200 reals. "Lucas," Dr. Santos said on the day of the final test, "this system you created can revolutionize access to drinking water in needy communities. Do you realize the impact this can have?" Lucas smiled, but his answer was characteristically humble. "It's just the beginning, Dr. Santos. Imagine if we could do this for all of people's basic problems. Food, energy, housing, health. We can make the world a better place." Robert felt his heart tighten with pride and emotion. This extraordinary boy wasn't just thinking about one invention. He was thinking about transforming the world. The project presentation was scheduled for a local community science fair. Robert suggested presenting at a larger event with more media visibility, but Lucas preferred to start small. "I want to show it first to the people who will actually use this," he explained. "What's the point of impressing businessmen and journalists if Mrs. Maria from the corner, who needs to carry water in buckets, doesn't understand how it works?" The fair took place at a public school in the neighborhood where Lucas lived. The gymnasium was decorated with colorful posters made by students, and there was a contagious energy of children presenting their projects to family and friends. Lucas's booth was different from all the others. Besides the working prototype, he had prepared a simple but impactful presentation explaining the problem of lack of drinking water and how his invention could help. Robert, wearing jeans and a casual t-shirt, perhaps the first time in decades he appeared in public without a suit, helped Lucas organize the presentation. He had learned to operate the equipment and could explain the technical aspects, while Lucas focused on showing the human impact of the invention. "This system," Lucas explained to a group of local residents, "can be built by any community. The materials cost less than 200 reals, and maintenance is simple. Each family can have clean water without depending on anyone." An elderly lady in the audience raised her hand. "Boy, that's nice to say, but in practice, who's going to teach us how to do it? Who's going to fix it when it breaks?" The question hit the core of the real challenge of any social project, and Robert was curious to see how Lucas would respond. "You're right, ma'am," Lucas said, smiling. "That's why part of the project is creating learning centers in each community. It's not just delivering ready-made equipment. It's teaching people to build, operate, and repair. It's giving real autonomy." The answer provoked murmurs of approval from the audience. Robert realized that Lucas wasn't just thinking like an inventor, but like a true social entrepreneur. The presentation was a resounding success. By the end of the day, dozens of people had signed up to participate in the pilot projects. Schools wanted to include the system in their science programs. Local NGOs offered partnerships. A local TV journalist asked to do a story. But the most significant moment happened when a girl about 8 years old approached the booth. "Lucas," she said shyly, "I also want to invent things that help people. Can you teach me?" Lucas knelt to be at her height. "Of course. What's your name?" "Anna. I want to invent a machine that helps my grandmother climb stairs. She has difficulty because she has problems with her legs." Robert watched as Lucas talked seriously with Anna about her idea, asking intelligent questions, offering suggestions, treating her dreams with the same respect he had received. At that moment, Robert realized they had created something much bigger than a water purifier. They had planted the seed of a movement. 3 months later, the project had grown beyond the most optimistic expectations. What began as the dream of a lemonade-selling boy had become the Lucas Mitchell Foundation for Social Innovation, an organization that combined Robert's resources with Lucas's humanitarian vision. They had installed water purification systems in 12 different communities. Each installation came with a training program that taught residents not only to operate the equipment, but to replicate it for other communities. But the most impressive thing was what was happening with the children. Inspired by Lucas's example, dozens of young inventors were developing solutions for local problems. Anna, the girl who wanted to help her grandmother, had created a prototype of a simple motorized handrail. Others were working on vertical gardens, home composting systems, and even an app to connect people who needed help with volunteers willing to help. Robert found himself doing something he had never done before, mentoring young entrepreneurs. His business skills, which he had previously used only to get rich, now served to amplify the impact of ideas that could transform lives. "Mr. Mitchell," Lucas said one afternoon while they were reviewing reports from ongoing projects, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure. Are you happier now?" The question caught Robert off guard with its simplicity and depth. He looked around his apartment, which had transformed. The walls still had expensive art, but now also had children's drawings. The dining table for 12 now hosted weekly meetings with young inventors. The lonely silence had been replaced by animated conversations about how to make the world better. "You know, Lucas," Robert said, choosing his words carefully, "for years I thought success meant having more money, more companies, more recognition. But I discovered that true success is having purpose. And purpose comes from helping others realize their dreams." Lucas smiled. "So does that mean our partnership is working? Better than I could have imagined." That night, Robert did something he hadn't done in decades. He called his family. He had distanced himself from his brothers years ago over business disagreements and from his nephews through pure neglect. But now, inspired by the importance of human connection that Lucas had taught him, he wanted to reconnect. "Michael," Robert said when his younger brother answered the phone, his voice loaded with surprise and caution. "Robert, my God, it's been so long. Is everything okay? Did something happen?" "Everything's fine. Actually, it's better than it's been in a long time. I wanted to apologize and tell an incredible story about a boy who changed my life." The conversation lasted 2 hours. Robert told about Lucas, about the water purification project, about how he had rediscovered what really mattered in life. Michael, initially suspicious, gradually became involved in the story. "Robert," Michael said at the end, "you seem different, more like the brother I knew before you became obsessed with work. It's because I am different, and I want you to meet the person responsible for that." A week later, Robert's family gathered for the first time in 15 years. Not at an expensive restaurant or formal event, but in Lucas's improvised laboratory, where the boy was working on his newest project, a solar heating system for low-income homes. "Uncle Robert," said Emma, Robert's 12-year-old niece, watching Lucas explain the principles of thermal energy. He's the same age as my brother, but seems to know more than my science teachers. Lucas is special, Robert agreed, watching the boy interact naturally with his family. But you know what makes him really special? It's not just what he knows, it's how he uses what he knows to help others. During lunch, Lucas told Robert's family about his life, his dreams, and how the partnership with Robert had changed not only his possibilities, but also his perspective. Before meeting Mr. Mitchell, Lucas said, passing a dish of homemade food made by Maria, I used to dream big, but alone. Now I dream big, but I know I have an entire family supporting me. And I discovered that the best dreams are those we realize together with other people. Michael pulled Robert aside after lunch. I don't know what that boy did to you, but thank you. I had lost hope of getting my brother back. He reminded me of who I was before I got lost along the way, Robert replied, watching Lucas teach his nephews simple science experiments, and showed me who I can still be. 6 months after the science fair, everyone's lives had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Lucas continued selling lemonade on the corner because, as he said, it's important to remember where we came from. But now his stand had become a meeting point for young people interested in science and innovation. The Lucas Mitchell Foundation had grown, but maintained its focus on simplicity and direct impact. Instead of bureaucratizing, they had created a decentralized network of community innovation centers, simple spaces where anyone could learn, create, and share solutions for local problems. Robert discovered that leading this initiative was infinitely more gratifying than any business he had closed before. He was still financially successful, but now money was a tool to amplify impact, not an end in itself. The most surprising transformation, however, happened on a Thursday afternoon when Robert was helping Lucas test a new version of the water purifier. They were so focused on work that they didn't notice when a group of Japanese businessmen, the same ones from the meeting Robert had missed the day he fainted, approached the lemonade stand. "Mitchell-san," said the group's leader, Hiroshi Tanaka, recognizing Robert even outside his usual corporate environment. Robert looked up, slightly embarrassed to be found in casual clothes, with dirty hands from work, next to a lemonade cart. "Mr. Tanaka," Robert said, standing up, "what a surprise to find you here. We were in the region for other meetings and heard about a revolutionary water purification project. We didn't imagine you were involved," Tanaka explained, his curious eyes examining the equipment. "Can you show us how it works?" Lucas, always enthusiastic to talk about his inventions, immediately began explaining the system. But this time, something different happened. Instead of using complex technical terminology, he adapted his language to be accessible, using simple analogies and focusing on practical benefits. "Imagine that dirty water is like soup with bad ingredients mixed in," Lucas began, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Our system separates the good ingredients from the bad ones, using 3 cooks: the sun, plants, and simple filters. In the end, only good water for drinking remains." The Japanese businessmen, accustomed to formal presentations and complex PowerPoints, were fascinated by the clarity and passion of Lucas's explanation. They asked sophisticated technical questions, which the boy answered with ease, demonstrating complete mastery of the project. "This system," Tanaka said at the end of the demonstration, "has the potential to impact millions of people. Have you thought about international expansion?" Robert and Lucas exchanged glances. It was exactly the kind of opportunity that, at another time in his life, Robert would have embraced immediately. Big investments, global expansion, massive profits. But it was Lucas who answered first. "Mr. Tanaka, I appreciate the interest, but our philosophy is different. We don't want to create a big company that controls the technology. We want to teach people to build their own systems. We want each community to be independent, not dependent on us." Tanaka seemed surprised. "But what about profit potential and intellectual property protection?" "The profit," Robert said, feeling proud of Lucas's approach, comes from knowing we're making a difference. And the best protection for this technology is ensuring it's in the hands of those who need it most. The conversation continued for another hour, with the Japanese businessmen gradually understanding and respecting the philosophy behind the project. At the end, Tanaka made a different proposal. What if, instead of a traditional investment, our company sponsored training centers in Japan? We could adapt the technology for our rural communities and, in exchange, share our innovations in energy efficiency. It was a partnership proposal, not an acquisition. A way to amplify impact without compromising the project's values. Lucas looked at Robert. What do you think, partner? The word partner made Robert's heart warm. In all his years of business, no one had referred to him that way. With genuine affection and mutual respect. I think it's a brilliant idea, Robert replied, but with one condition. Lucas has to approve all the details. This is his project. That night, while celebrating the new international agreement with cold lemonade and pizza, Robert reflected on how his life had completely changed. 12 months ago, he was a lonely man, driven only by financial ambition. Now, he was surrounded by a chosen family, working on projects that could change the world, feeling more alive and purposeful than he had ever felt. Mr. Mitchell, Lucas said, interrupting his thoughts, can I tell you a secret? Sure. That first day when you fainted in front of my stand, I didn't help just because it was the right thing to do. I helped because I saw in your eyes the same thing I sometimes saw in the mirror. What did you see? Loneliness and fear that no one would care if we disappeared. Robert felt a lump form in his throat. And now, what do you see when you look in the mirror? Lucas smiled, that radiant smile that had won Robert over from the first day. Now I see someone who has a family. Someone who has big dreams, but doesn't need to realize them alone. Someone who learned that the most important invention isn't a machine. It's the connection between people. Robert hugged the boy, this small genius who had saved his life in ways he was only beginning to understand. Thank you, Lucas, for everything. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for believing that a lemonade-selling boy could change the world. You didn't change the world, Lucas. You changed my world, and that's even better. Did this story inspire you? Share it so more people can be motivated to make a difference. 2 years later, the corner of Augusta Street where it all began had become a symbol of hope and innovation for the entire city of São Paulo. The lemonade cart was still there, now operated by a rotation system of local young inventors, but beside it was something new, a commemorative plaque installed by the City Hall. At this location, on March 15, 2023, a 10-year-old boy proved that the biggest dreams can begin with the smallest gestures. Lucas Silva, selling lemonade with love and determination, crossed paths with Robert Mitchell, a successful man who had lost his humanity. Together, they created the Lucas Mitchell Foundation for Social Innovation, which has already impacted more than 100,000 people in 15 countries. This plaque is a reminder that true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share. Lucas, now 12 years old and still as enthusiastic as ever, was there that morning for the plaque's inauguration, alongside Robert, Maria, and hundreds of people who had been touched by their work. "Speech, speech!" someone from the crowd shouted. Lucas climbed onto a small improvised platform, adjusted the microphone, and looked at all those people who represented transformed communities, inspired young inventors, and reconnected families. "When I was little," Lucas began, provoking laughter since he was clearly still a child, "my mom always said that if we planted seeds of kindness, one day we would harvest forests of hope. I didn't know what that meant until I met Mr. Mitchell." He looked at Robert, who was in the front row with tears in his eyes. "I learned that it doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 50 years old, if you sell lemonade or run companies. Everyone has something valuable to offer. Everyone has dreams that can help other people, and everyone without exception needs family." The crowd applauded, but Lucas wasn't finished. "The lemonade I sell here isn't special because of the lemons or sugar. It's special because it's made with love and served with hope. And I discovered that's how it is with everything in life. The best things happen when we put love into what we do and share it with those who care about us." He paused, looking directly at the cameras broadcasting the event live. "To all the children watching, your dreams matter. It doesn't matter if they seem too big or too impossible. Someone, somewhere, needs exactly the solution you can create. And to all the adults, it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to remember that true success is measured by the lives we touch, not by the things we accumulate." The applause was deafening. People were crying, hugging each other, and many were already taking out their phones to share the message with their own networks. Robert climbed onto the platform and placed his hand on Lucas's shoulder. "2 years ago," Robert said into the microphone, "I was a man who had everything, but had nothing. I was dying inside, suffocated by my own success. This extraordinary boy not only saved my life when I fainted in front of his stand, he saved me from a life without purpose." He looked at Lucas with paternal affection. "Lucas taught me that true leadership isn't about commanding people. It's about serving people. He taught me that true innovation isn't about creating complicated technology. It's about solving real problems for real people. And he taught me that true wealth isn't in what we keep for ourselves, but in what we give to the world." Robert paused, emotional. "Today, I announce that 80% of my personal wealth will be transferred to the Lucas Mitchell Foundation to ensure this work continues for generations. But more important than that, today I announce that I have officially adopted Lucas as my son, because family isn't about blood. It's about love, respect, and mutual choice." The crowd exploded in applause and shouts of joy. Lucas hugged Robert tightly, both crying with happiness. Maria, who had given her consent for the adoption after months of careful conversations, climbed onto the platform to hug her 2 favorite men. "Lucas," she said into the microphone, "your biological father left us when you were 3 years old because he said he couldn't handle a son who dreamed too much. Today you gained a father who loves your dreams as much as I do." She looked at Robert. "And Robert, thank you for seeing in my son what I always saw. Not just an intelligent boy, but a pure heart that wants to make the world better." While the ceremony continued, with presentations by young inventors and demonstrations of innovative projects, a journalist asked Lucas what his next big project would be. "We're working on something even more ambitious," Lucas replied, his eyes shining with familiar excitement. "An education system that connects children from around the world to solve local problems together. Imagine a child in Brazil with a clean water problem being helped by another child in Korea who understands purification, who in turn receives help from a child in Kenya who knows about solar energy." The journalist seemed impressed. "Does this project have a name?" Lucas and Robert exchanged complicit glances. "Global Lemonade Project," they said together, laughing at the obvious but perfect choice. "Because," Lucas explained, "the best lemonade is made with ingredients from everywhere, but prepared with local love." As the sun set over São Paulo on that special day, Robert Mitchell looked around and saw his life completely transformed. He had a true family, a purpose that motivated him every day, and the certainty that he was leaving the world better than he found it. But perhaps most importantly, he had learned that sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the smallest gestures, like a cup of lemonade offered with care, like a hand extended to help a stranger, like the decision to believe that a 10-year-old child can, yes, change the world. And while Lucas continued to sell lemonade on the same corner where it all began, because some traditions are too important to abandon, Robert knew they were just at the beginning of a journey that would inspire future generations. After all, as Lucas always said, the best invention in the world isn't a machine. It's the connection between people who choose to care for each other. And that invention they had perfected together. The end. Sometimes true wealth isn't in the money we accumulate, but in the lives we touch and the connections we create. A simple cup of lemonade, offered with love and hope, can be the beginning of transformations that change not just one life, but the entire world. Never underestimate the power of small gestures of kindness. They can be the seed of extraordinary miracles. Did you like this emotional story? If it touched your hearts like it touched mine, leave a strong like here. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will move you. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any. In the comments, tell me, do you believe that love transcends death? Have you had any inexplicable experiences with loved ones who have passed away? I want to know your stories. And don't forget to share this video with that special person who needs to believe in miracles and second chances. Until the next story, a hug from the heart.